web application framework. Let us start with Model 2, which represents model view controller design. Struts is based on model view controller design. Previously, we implemented model view controller design in our Java EE based web module. Then we'll discuss struts, basics of struts and its benefits, how struts implements model view controller design and its architecture. Then we'll discuss all the important elements of struts configuration file called as struts.xml. Then we'll see how struts works through one simple struts2 based web module. So let us start with Model 2. Struts2 is based on Java 5, Servlet 2.4 and JSP 2.0 API. So you need a Tomcat Servlet Container version 5.5 or later versions of Tomcat, or you can use application servers like JBoss, WebSphere, WebLogic. Let us start with Model 2. Model 2 means Model View Controller Design pattern. So already we applied Model View Controller Design pattern in our Java EE based web modules or web applications. Before starting with struts, you should be thorough in Model 2 because struts supports Model 2, Model View Controller Design pattern. Okay, now this diagram shows the architecture of Model View Controller Design pattern. So here Model 2, I said it represents Model View Controller Design pattern. It is recommended architecture for Java EE based web applications. In other words, Model 2 is a cornerstone for Model 2 or Model View Controller Design pattern is the cornerstone for any industrial strength Java EE based web application. So in Model 2, when you apply Model 2 in our Java web applications, there are three modules such as controller, view, and model. At the same time, when you apply Model 2 in your applications, you will have a single entry point for all the pages. So an application that implements Model View Controller Design pattern will have three parts. Controller will have three modules such as controller, view, and model. Coming to model, here model encapsulates application data as well as business logic. Here models are POJOs, plain old Java objects, normal Java Bean components or model. In our previous applications like bookstore, user management, we used models. So here models are POJOs, plain old Java object. Model is responsible for encapsulating our application's business logic and application data. In other words, model is also responsible for implementing the business logic of our application. Coming to view part, JSPs, Java Server Pages are used for view part. JSP is used for view, which is responsible for presentation logic. JSP takes the input from the user and sends the client's data to the controller part. JSP can also be used, it means view part can be used to display the application's results. So view part takes care of the display of application results. Mostly you'll be using JSP in the view part, which is responsible for presentation logic. Coming to controller part, servlet. Earlier, we created a user-defined servlets in our simple applications like a login module, user management, bookstore. Now, Struts is going to provide predefined controller component called filter dispatcher. So right now you don't need to worry about that. Okay, in model 2, you'll be creating our own user-defined servlet. Here, servlet acts as a controller in your application. So here, in other words, in simple words, servlet or controller component acts like a gatekeeper. It receives inputs from the client request, then invokes an appropriate model, then view. So based on the client's request, it invokes an appropriate model, which in turn interacts with the database. Okay, then our controller component places our model object or action object in a place which can be received from the view part, so that the server side values can be displayed on the client's web browser. So servlet uses request dispatcher to forward the action object to, to the view part, to the JSP, in which you'll be using custom tags. You'll be using tags to display the contents of the model object or action object to the end user. So we did the same thing in our login module user management applications. So this is a model 2. But here the key point is the client's HTTP request must be redirected to a servlet controller component. The client's requests URI, uniform resource identifiers. Already I showed how to map the specific URL pattern to your servlet program. So the client's requests URI, uniform resource identifier. URI tells the servlet or controller component what action to invoke. So the servlet determines an action from the URI, uniform resource identifier. Servlet invokes an appropriate model based on the action. Here, what is an action? Here, the term action refers to operation that the application is able to perform. In model are POJOs, plain old job objects. So the POJO associated with an action is called action object. So normally models are POJOs, plain old job objects, or job beans. They are responsible for encapsulating your application's business logic and application data. Here, POJO that is associated with an action is called action object. So model object or action object is because once the server controller receives the client's request, it determines an appropriate action from the URI, uniform resource identifier. Because here URI tells the controller what action to invoke. So it invokes an appropriate model based on the action. Right. Then as usual, model can interact with the database. Servlet binds the model object in a place, either in session, request, or application scope, then uses request dispatcher to forward the model object to the client view, to the JSP, where we'll be using tags to display the contents of the action object or model object. Fine. So here the action term is very important because in Struts we are going to create several actions. See, for example, to add the product informations, for adding the product informations, you would require two actions. For example, To get the application to display the add product form, to enter the product informations, you would use this URL, domain name, application name, then action, product underscore input dot action. This is the name of the action. Actually, this is a URI, Uniform Resource Identifier. So now the client request goes to the controller component, servlet. In the model 2, the request goes to the controller component. Now this URI, Uniform Resource Identifier, tells the controller what action to invoke. Then the controller invokes an appropriate model to display the add product form to the end user. For example, in order to save the data to the database, you would use this URI, Uniform Resource Identifier, product underscore save dot action. This is the name of the action. This entire URI tells the controller what action to invoke. So based on the action, the controller invokes an appropriate model. The model is an POJO. So the POJO associated with the particular action. So the POJO associated with the particular action is called action object.